Hello everyone, welcome to City Skylines Springwood City Unmodded Gameplay episode 15. We spent the previous two episodes beautifying the city. Now in this episode we are going to try out the new DLC Plazas and Promenades and kind of continue beautifying the city more formally. Now before we actually make a full-blown walkable district, I want to add a few promenades, kind of just to test out the waters and see how it feels like. And I have thought about a few spots within the city where we can do this, and one of those spots is going to be Mulberry Park. This is a fairly new neighborhood and we were already putting in some efforts in the previous episode to make this more walkable. So let's continue building upon that. So my starting point is obviously converting all our previous pedestrian pathways into these new promenades. This is going to make some buildings inaccessible, and there are some problems around this with these DLC that I'll talk about in just a minute. Before that, let me just add a few more promenades, especially those that connect these in between streets and connect the main street as well with the neighborhood. And I'll also add a connection over here like so. Alright, so at this point I think this is looking fairly well. We have all these promenades that are looking really nice, and then we have this connection that goes to the main street and the monorail. We have this connection here that is a little bit weird, but it connects them well with the main street on this side as well. And I'm just going to move this school back over here where it originally was, and I think that looks good overall. Look at all these people that are using these promenades. They are actually looking really happy, and I'm also quite happy looking at them using these promenades. And then here we have some service vehicles using these promenades. Well, the garbage truck is going back, but the police is going to enter using the bollards between the promenade and the street, which is perfect. This is a significant improvement from the pedestrian pathways that we previously had. Alright, so now all good things aside, let's talk about the problem. As you see, there are some buildings which are showing this icon. And as I understand, it means that these buildings are accessible only from the promenade, so there's no way service vehicles can access them unless I make this into a dedicated pedestrian district and add the required service points. The problem is, if all I want to do is add a few promenades around buildings which already have street access, such as this one, there's no smooth, hassle-free way to do this. In a situation like this, I wish either they let me control if the building should be accessible from the street or the promenade, or they let me turn off zoning around the given promenade altogether. So even though this DLC opens up so many new things, it feels a little bit more restrictive in smaller gameplay aspects like this one. But regardless of that, I'm quite happy with what they have delivered so far in this DLC. This is obviously changing the way we play the game for good. And regarding the issues in this area, let's come back to this in a little bit. Now, before doing anything else, I want to add one more thing which I have been forgetting for a really long time, and that is giving this neighborhood a name. We have just been calling it this area and that area since forever. So let's add a district. We'll obviously be adding policies as well in the future, but for now we're just doing it for the name. And we are going to call this... Okay, it's called Cozy District. Well, I'm going to stick with that name because that's a very apt name for that district. Alright, let's move on to the next thing. Now, with this area, my intention was to build quieter neighborhoods with less traffic, which is why these two parts are not connected with roads. This is completely separate from this one. If we had roads between them, cars would have preferred to use that instead of the main roads here, and then this neighborhood wouldn't be as quiet anymore. Now, this also meant that these two parts of this neighborhood were disconnected for pedestrians and service vehicles as well. For pedestrians, it was an easy fix, which was just adding a number of pathways as you already see here. But for service vehicles, there was no way to do this up until now, because now with the new promenades, we can have that connection as well. So let's start adding all these connections. I'm going to start from here and remove some of these pathways and replace them with a promenade, just following the contour of the road. And then about 3 blocks up, let's add another promenade. And now we can move this crematorium to a more central location to both of these. Let's remove some of these extra pathways as well, and maybe add another promenade over here. This will just make sure that all 3 sides of these neighborhoods are connected well enough. And I think it would be nice to have a connection over here as well. This will just add more connections for service vehicles to access this neighborhood from the main street. And at this point, I'm just experimenting with this layout a little bit. I kind of want to move this park over here. I think it just looks nice over there in terms of the space that we have. But I don't think the promenade is working well with the park. Either it's the park or the promenade. So I think I'm going to keep the park and kind of get done with that. Let's just make sure all our pathways are doing well. I think there is a broken connection here, so let me just make a tunnel over here and just connect it from both sides. And I think that looks about right. And now that I look at it, we can also add a connection over here. This would be nice to connect Briarwood Triangle with our residential areas. Maybe a larger promenade like this one would look really nice. I think I broke the fence over there, so I'm going to rebuild that. And I'm really liking the character of this larger promenade. It has a vista of trees in the center, which is kind of following the same character as the street up there on the right. And I think this would be really nice because it would provide a pleasant walk for our Sims between their workplaces and their homes. I'm also going to quickly skim through this neighborhood and add some of these. We can probably also add one over here. This is mostly just replacing our existing pathways, but like we talked about earlier, this is better in terms of providing better access for our service vehicles. I'm also enjoying the aesthetic of all these promenades. We'll also be trying other styles of promenades in the future. But at this point, we are doing good. We have all these new connections. Now, one of the other things I was thinking was maybe we can move this university to the left. Two reasons for this. First is the university building is the only building right now on the right, and if you want to develop that stretch in the future, then that building would be an obstruction. Second reason is we have the bus bay on the left, and having the university also on the left would make it more accessible from the bus bay. It's not going to make a big difference in terms of gameplay, but aesthetically it would just look nicer, more natural and more realistic. The only problem I foresee is the bus bay would also be used by university traffic. Might not be too much of an issue, but we can test it out and see what it looks like. Alright, so I think that is looking pretty nice. The university has its own plaza, which is actually looking quite nice with that promenade. And I just realized that somehow the bus stops are not in the bus bay, so let's fix that. And oh boy, look at all these people who are going back to the bus stop. And that actually makes me happy because there are a lot of people who are using our transit, so that's really nice. But yeah, with this, let's move on to the next thing. So I'm back to Mulberry Park and I'm seeing more and more buildings with this walkable district issue. So to fix this, I'll go ahead and make this into a walkable district. We anyway wanted to make one of those districts in this episode, so might as well start with this one. I'm going to put a service point maybe over here and let's start upgrading some of these streets. Oh, we are having this error. Let's resume the game and there we go. That's perfect. Oh, our buildings have started leveling up. That's really nice. Let's make all of these streets into promenades. I did not really expect that these buildings would level up so quickly, but that's really nice. Let's also fill up these zoning squares and these ones here. And let's convert this central promenade into a larger one like this. And I think that looks really good. Let's just quickly check the levels of these buildings. I think most of them have leveled up all the way, so that's really interesting. I don't think I fully understand service points yet. This one is showing that none of my trucks are used. I don't know why, but that's a learning process, I guess. This is good for now. So in regards to the Plazas and Promenades DLC, we have done both so far. We have created not just an entire walkable district, but we have also made smaller promenades in different areas, and the results are quite nice, as you can see. In this regard, the next step for us is to keep using this DLC more and more in other areas and kind of keep developing this along the same spirit of beautifying the city that we have been having in the previous two episodes. So we'll keep doing that, but along with that, we also have other aspects of the city that we need to grow into. So maybe that's something that we'll look into. For example, the industrial demand that we have right now is going over the roof, so maybe that's something that we'll deal with next. But that's it for this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed. Please leave a like if you did and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.